Hello, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 9 of Let's Talk About It. I'm your host, the DiDi Skky, DiDi Skky. So glad that you are with us tonight. Let's hear it. Woo! Another wonderful Wednesday. Oh my goodness, I am so glad to be here. Shouts out to the Martha's Vineyard Film Festival. I was there all last week. I also enjoyed the comedy festival. So I'm going to have a lot to catch y'all up on. When I tell you, it is a vibe. If you have not been, like I did, check it off, put it on your bucket list. It's a must-do experience. I'm going to tell you more about that. But before I even get started, I need to hear and know who is in the building. So let me hear from you. Let me see who's here with us tonight. Let me get some shout outs in. I want to see who's in the building. Oh my goodness, I am so excited. Tonight's show is very, very important. It's impactful. It is something that we need to discuss. And we are talking about mental health, mental illness, and the relationship with incarcerated, the criminal justice system. So we definitely are going to have a deep dive conversation. But for now, I need to know who is in the bit. Hey, Shayna, how are you? So glad that you are here with us. Who else is here? Shouts out to Levi Q, always in the building. Shouts out to you. Oh my goodness, my girl Rachel, she never puts me down. She is always in the building. Shouts out to you as well. Always glad to see you. Listen, so as I always say, we need you to like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you are watching on Facebook, or if you're streaming with us live on Instagram, shouts out to you. I always say shouts out to my Instagram followers, but we need you to go on over to YouTube and subscribe to the channel, because eventually we won't be live on any of the other platforms. So unfortunately, if you don't, you're going to miss us, and you don't want to miss the engagement, the content. We have prizes and surprises, all of that. You don't want to miss it. So be sure to go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. Yashika, I see you in the building. Shouts out to you. So glad that you are here. Shouts out to Deborah, Donna, Brittany, Brandy, all of y'all in the building. My mama, who I'm sure is watching at home on TV. But listen, guys, as I've said, I need you to like, share, and subscribe. Hop on into this conversation. What's up, Stephanie? So glad to see you, hon. Hop on into this conversation. Call your family, call your friends, tell them to tune in, because we're about to speak candidly on mental illness and the criminal justice system. I have a very dear friend of mine who is going to be joining us tonight. So I don't want y'all to miss out on this conversation. So log in, tell your friends, tell everybody to come on in, because it's about to go down. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hop on in to the conversation tonight. We're going to unravel the complexities of incarceration and mental health treatment. Now, I did have a mental health counselor on before. Shouts out to Ernest Benson, who joined us and came in to talk about just our personal mental health and mental illness, right? The differentiation between the two. Those steps that we can take to ensure that we are protecting our mental health. And just understanding more so of what it is and what it means to us as our as a culture, and what it means to us on daily, how that can change with career, with relationships, in life. And so tonight we're going to take a deep dive. We're going to take a deep dive into mental illness and incarceration. So join us tonight for episode 9, Prescribing Justice, a Doctor's Fight for Truth. My guests tonight are authors, Dr. Joseph Poitier, and my best friend, Deanna Pierce. Hello.
Hi.
Hello, hello.
How are y'all tonight? Good to see you, Deanna.
Likewise, thank you for having us.
Absolutely. And Dr. Poitier, I am honored.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us tonight. And as I've always said, my show is a platform for my audience. I allow for them to engage, interact, provide questions, pose concerns, whatever they want to, do and say. This platform is for them. I'm just a vessel. And so you will see some of the questions that will come through, and we will ask those questions as well. So we're super excited to get started. Let's go ahead and hop on into the conversation. I have my book right here, Prescribing Justice, A Doctor's Fight for Truth. Why this book and why now?
Well, I'll take that one first. I formerly worked for DYRS, Department of Youth and Rehabilitation Services in Washington, D.C. A few years back. And as their chief integrity officer dealing with investigations, formal internal investigations, really gave me a little bit of insight into juvenile justice, not just from a compliance standpoint for the organization as a whole, but just really seeing the inner workings, right? And when you get there, you realize, I come from a criminal justice education background. You come from a background thinking the two are displaced, juvenile justice versus adult corrections. And it's not until you work in the system and you're involved in the system and you realize, one is really an extension of the other. You walk into the hope thinking restorative justice is one thing, these kids are rehabilitated. And then when you really learn the story and the pieces involved with it, with mental health, which is a major issue of a lot of the youth that are incarcerated. The book of the why now, the story really hasn't changed since I worked for DYRS a few years back. It's still very relevant. You still have the same discussions about proper allocation of resources, shortage of those in the profession to really provide wraparound, true, meaningful services. And when you think about like the recently appointed Tulsa County County Center for Juvenile Justice, David Parker, the director, he's still having concerns about partnering entities. The narrative is still there. DA from New Orleans, still having discussions about resources. So when I met Dr. Poitier and learned about his story, he's very passionate about it. And you can't help but want to be involved in the process because very few people live it and work it and truly passionate about what they do. He is one of those people. And DiDi, we laugh and joke. I don't need another job like a Jamaican needs another job, as they say. But I was so taken back and so privileged and humbled to learn about his story that, when I was asked to be a part of it and give my input from the juvenile piece, I thought it was a good platform, especially when you hear about his story.
Right. And Dr. Poitier, please share. Why now?
Why now? Because I'm growing older and I wanted to make sure that my story was heard before I transitioned on to another period. It's a sad story. It's a terrible story. It's a horrific story that's occurring in 2024. The problem has existed for years. We would think by now that it would be better than it is now, but unfortunately, it's not. It's the story of the mentally ill that are housed in our criminal justice system. There's a lot of talk now about the overrepresentation of Black people, of minorities in our criminal justice system. Michelle Alexander wrote about it in her book, The New Jim Crow, how our criminal justice system has become nothing but another form of racism. The story that's not told is that most of the people who are housed in our jails and prisons suffer from a mental disorder. We're talking about anywhere from 40 to 60% have some kind of mental disorder.
Right.
And of that percentage, 20% have a serious mental disorder. I'm talking about schizophrenia. I'm talking about depression. I'm talking about bipolar disorder. I'm talking about substance abuse. People don't know who are housed in our prisons and jails. And it's only when your loved one or a friend touches the criminal justice system with their child or their relative do they realize what's really happening. Oftentimes, these people are voiceless. Their voices are muted by their illness and by the system as well. And it's a story that needs to be told. It's a story that has to be told if we are to progress as a civilization.
Wow. So much to unpack with that. And I have notes that I'm taking so that I can circle back on some of your responses. But before we dive into what is actually going on, what the experience is behind the bars, of what many of us may not have even have no idea or can probably even fathom, I would like for you to take a deep dive and tell us about that. But before you do, what brought you into this profession? Tell us a little bit about your career path and how you got to this, particular advocacy.
My parents were both college graduates. My mother was a teacher. My father was a pharmacist. They overemphasized education. My daddy actually was taken out of FAMU to serve in the war. And after he returned, he got his pharmacy degree from Xavier University. So I spent a lot of time around pharmacists, physicians, healthcare personnel, and a career in medicine was always sort of emphasized. And I had good study habits. My parents made sure that studies took over before athletics. When you're living in the hood, you want to be a basketball player, you want to be a football player. Because that's where you see Black men having a good role, or having a career, or having money, or being exposed to the media. But my dad always said your education comes first. And I attended Morehouse College in Atlanta. I did pretty good in college. I was a member of Phi Beta Kappa. I was the ranking science graduate in a graduating class. And I decided to study medicine. The University of Miami was offering scholarships at the time. Robert Bragg, one of our professors, was instrumental in making sure that Black medical students successfully completed the university. That's the same Bragg Stadium. His father was on the faculty at FAMU, and I think Bragg Stadium was named after his father. So he kept an eye on us. He made sure that our struggles were overcome. He was there for us. He supported us. He helped us get through a system that was difficult to get through, being a minority and being underrepresented.
What area did you grow up in?
I grew up half of my life in Liberty City, the other half in Alpena.
Right. So not an easy road, of course. And as you mentioned, the visual of success, during those times, were basketball players. We did not see a lot of doctors or those in higher level positions, and so you saw that path. Like you said, healthcare was the path for you because of your family. And then, so how did you transition into the advocacy of the prison system and what was going on in our criminal justice system, the unfair treatment and what was going on? How did you transition into that advocacy?
I chose to become a psychiatrist. There was a choice between becoming a family medicine doc and a psychiatrist. My family wasn't too happy about that, but because I had a family of my own, it gave me a greater opportunity to spend more time with them while I was doing my residency, although it was rigorous, as rigorous as any other specialty. And I was always quiet and liked to listen, and chose psychiatry as a discipline.
Okay.
What's important is there are different specialties, subspecialties within psychiatry. There are child psychiatrists, there are psychiatrists who specialize in the treatment of substance abuse. I chose forensic psychiatry. That branch of psychiatry deals with the study of law and psychiatry. I had to study the law. I had to know laws that lawyers knew. And one of my mentors, Sanford Jacobson, I shadowed him during my 4th year. And part of my motivation to be a forensic psychiatrist was sort of selfish. His name would be in the newspaper. I would see him on TV. He dressed nice. He always had money. And I said, this is what I want to do. I want to be a forensic psychiatrist. I remember during my 4th year, I had the opportunity to walk into the Dade County Jail with him.
Okay.
And when those doors shut, that sound, when those metal bars shut behind you, send chills down your spine. And it was what I saw inside that really motivated me. The Black faces that I saw, the young Black faces. And I said, this is where I am most needed.
Okay.
So I started off working at South Florida State Hospital because I needed an income. And then my first exposure to the law was at South Florida Evaluation and Treatment Center. It's a state-run facility. Because there are more mentally ill people in our jail than there is in any institution in the state of Florida. It's sort of unfortunate.
Why is that? Why? What is your perspective on why those numbers are so different?
There's several reasons. President Kennedy passed the Mental Health Act. And at that time, it was right in accord with civil rights, giving people more rights, treating people kinder. And one of his missions was to eliminate the state psychiatric hospitals from warehousing thousands of people. They used to house 2,000 and 3,000 people at a time. And unfortunately, during that time, things were done in the name of medicine that were not good to people. Ice baths, insulin comas. We didn't know what we did now. So he wanted to rid these psychiatric hospitals of people that were essentially at times being abused. We had the advent of some new, they're now old, but psychotropic medications like Thorazine, which help people get better. And some people saw it as the answer to freeing people from the confines of prolonged institution. But what was not set up was a system to take care of these people once they got out of the hospital. There was no infrastructure. There was no housing. There were no follow-up centers. There were nobody to lead them once they got out. And unfortunately, with the change in political climate and getting tougher on crime during the Nixon and the Reagan years, and the outcry about substance abuse and how our communities were being, quote unquote, destroyed by substance abuse. Many people got arrested for abusing drugs and using drugs. And they still make up quite a bit of the numbers in our jail systems now. But what we now know is that substance abuse is not a weakness. It's not a weakness. It's not a crime. It's not a flaw in your character. It's a disease that affects your brain. So that deinstitutionalization, along with the getting tougher on crime aspect of substance abuse, led to the incarceration, the rapid incarceration of individuals who are mostly poor, minorities, Black and brown individuals, the uneducated, and the homeless. And that's essentially what fills most of our prisons, our jail system now, and our prisons now. It's rather unfortunate.
It is, absolutely. You mentioned something in terms of the substance abuse. Tell us what the parallel is, or the relationship is, to substance abuse and mental illness.
Good, great question. Great question. Many people who suffer from schizophrenia and depression are comorbid, meaning they suffer from substance abuse at the same time. It's actually easier for someone who's hearing voices, tormented by voices, to walk on the street, get $5 worth of marijuana, than to actually go into a drugstore and buy a prescription.
Right.
The other thing, there are indigent drug programs that are available for people that are on Medicaid or that have low income, but unfortunately, most of the minority people, Black and brown, live in poor areas where you see more liquor stores and drug dealers than you see treatment facilities.
Wow. Absolutely. Absolutely, Dr. Poitier. And I am, as you are explaining this, literally family members, friends of our family who I know are have dealt with or is experiencing substance abuse, mental illness, homelessness. I'm literally picturing picturing those people and how important it is in terms of the community, and as it relates to the political season that we're in right now, and the discussions and importance of what we're discussing politically and what's going to be right for us as a culture and as a community. How important is community policing and knowing these particular people? And I'm trying to, because I can feel them. How important is knowing your community, knowing what these particular people need when they have a crisis, or when they're walking down the street with no clothes on. How important is it for the officers that police these areas to know, okay, this is so and so. I know they're just having a crisis, rather than them not knowing and saying, okay, I'm taking your butt to jail. Like, help me.
I mean, I'll take this very high level topical. I think just like any other ailment, right? We always talk about, and it can be applicable to homelessness, substance abuse, any recidivism, you name it, right? Like whatever the ailment is, it all boils down to wraparound services, right? How you start is how you finish. We can start with a piece of the equation, but if we don't have a fully integrated system, and this is where the community buy-in comes in, right? People like Dr. Poitier and their profession can do their job to 100% of their ability. But if there are no support services within the community and funds allocated for that access of funds, we all know, and that's a whole nother show, the funds may be set aside, but allowing people to have access to them. So this is where we talk about community politics involved in it. There has to be a immersive commitment to those in the community that we're not going to just get you the help you need. When you get out, we're going to give you the support systems in the event of a relapse. We're going to make it affordable. We're going to make it accessible. And sometimes it's something as simple as a solution of having it available through public transportation. You know, that's a hurdle that we talk about healthcare disparity. If there are not community-based healthcare options within the community, people are less inclined to go, and they're going to skip appointments, and they're not going to have those services. So, you know, Doc can go into, you know, he's a part of New Horizons. You know, it's one of the oldest community mental health clinics in South Florida. That's his lane. I'll let him get into it. But this is where the importance of programs like this come into play, and the critical need to keep their doors open to ensure that they have funding and they're properly staffed.
That's right. That's right. Yashika asked the question. I want to make sure that we get some questions from the audience. She says, do you think recidivism, and you actually just said that, Deanna, is due to mental health problems obtained while incarcerated?
Yes, it does, because oftentimes people that suffer from mental illness incur additional charges while they're in jail because of scuffles with the officers, non-compliance with medication. And then once they're out, compliance with medication is an issue as well. You know, having access to treatment, as Deanna just talked about, having treatment services available. I want to throw a plug in for New Horizons now. This is where I work, one of the agencies where I work. We'll be celebrating our 50-year anniversary this year. It's only through organizations like New Horizons. We have a dedicated board of directors, Mr. Kelly, who's been there for years. Yeah, you have Dr. Bestman, who helped to start the facility. She's retired. But and our new CEO is Michelle Sweeting, who took over Dr. Bestman's reins. We're not funded as well as we should. Most of our funding comes from state agencies. We have very few private donors like other agencies have outside of the minority population. We're not big as a society on giving back to organizations that need it. And that's where, as community, we need to step up. We have to give back to agencies such as No Horizons, who need the help to help take care of the most unfortunate.
I can actually say on a personal level, I worked with the city of Miami, and during my time with the Workforce Development Office, we partnered with New Horizon at one point, and this was many years ago, for job placement opportunities for the patients of New Horizons. We, worked with them on their interview skill sets and all of those things to help them get back acclimated to the community. And so I remember I worked in the marketing and public relations side of the house, but I know that was something that we offered. And so is that also something that's very important in terms of community engagement leadership, government, and participation and support, is that also important in addition to those funds?
Most definitely. With the changes in healthcare that have come about with HMOs and PPOs, we're not funded like we should, and we need funding from outside sources. Private donors would help, grants would help us,
Volunteering.
and people volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
Being role models for kids that suffer from mental disorders, educating other people about mental disorders. NAMI, the National Organization for the Mentally Ill, it's now headed by a Black man, Dan Gillison. It's the first time we've ever had a Black man to head an organization like this. Sister organization, the APA Foundation, which is the philanthropic part of the American Psychiatric Association, is headed by a Black man too, by the name of Raul Andrews. So we're in a position now to have access to things that we didn't have as a community. We just have to reach out and ask.
Right, right. Levi asked the question, what current national policy speaks to prison mental illness?
There's national standards. In fact, the biggest standards are laws. In terms of suffering from a mental illness, the law says that if you're not well enough to communicate with your attorney with a reasonable degree of rational understanding, or you don't have a complete understanding of your factual and rational understanding of your charges, you have to be sent away to a hospital to get well enough to be able to communicate with your attorney and understand your charges and go on through the legal process. Unfortunately, what happened is it leads to longer incarceration, because this process of being processed to go to the hospital slows your progression up through the jail system. If you didn't have a mental illness, you're going to be out before somebody with a mental illness. So there are laws in place. There are laws in place that govern how jail should be run. There's a national accrediting body which accredits jails and how they should be run. But unfortunately, the rules don't get held up. People don't stick with the rules. I mean, it takes a certain kind of individual to work in a jail or prison, because jails and prisons by design are meant to bring you down.
Right.
That includes the people that work there too. They are meant to bring you down. They are meant to make you give up and give in. You have to be strong. You have to be welded in your faith. You have to believe that you can help people get through that system. If you don't believe yourself that you can help people get through that system, you won't. I want to tell you a story now about a young man that I took care of several years ago. He suffered from schizophrenia, or as we say, new onset schizophrenia. It was his first break. He was hearing voices. He was paranoid.
Okay, I need some clarity on that. You said you referenced it as new onset schizophrenia?
Yeah, that was the first time he ever experienced symptoms like this.
How old was he?
most of the time, schizophrenia begins to occur when you're in your teens or your early 20s. So he was in his early 20s. And he came to my office and I prescribed him medication, and he did well for a while. But as is the case, most people think when they get better, when their symptoms go away, they no longer have to take the medication. So I lost track of him. 4 years later, I get a call from his aunt, who's in the legal field, and he's facing serious charges that involve his family members. Very serious charges where he could spend or be sentenced to a prolonged period in jail. And his aunt, being an attorney, intervened and hired the best attorney she could, and also sought out my help because the young man was looking at prison time. And this is the problem that we have with the people who suffer from mental illness in our jails. Do we punish them? Do we treat them? Do we treat and punish them? Luckily, she got a good law firm. I got involved in this case, and the young man, needless to say, was not sent to prison, where he likely would have faced 30 years. But the average family, especially the average Black family, brown family, does not have that kind of money to invest in getting their loved ones the help that they need and resources that they need. And I saw where ex-governor of New York gave the 4 medical schools $600 million. I would wish that some of that money goes to producing more Black psychiatrists.
There's a need.
Right.
For every 100 psychiatrists, only one is Black. And we need psychiatrists, psychologists, and Black social workers to go into our jails and prisons and take care of the people that need to be taken care of. A word that's mentioned often is cultural competence. We know our people, and we need more of us. And I'm not going to be around too much longer. We need more of us to go in and take care of individuals such as the one I just talked about.
And just to touch on something Doc said, and it's really important, DiDi, and it goes back to your point earlier. You know, when we talk about minority problems, right? Getting the help that people need, let's just say hypothetically, if we have the best of the best minorities serving minorities, it still requires a buy-in from law enforcement. It requires a buy-in from policy makers. You know, it's a top-down effect. Something as simple, and we talk about getting proper training. We've seen in the news countless times about there's this delicate balance of, police who are out in the field. It's already a delicate situation as is, right? And I don't care where you stand on the issue of fund the police, defund the police. At the end of the day, at some point, you have to take an understanding of this is still a job. A person still needs the proper tools and the proper training to do their job. Just like every officer wants to come home, every person you would hope that they interact with has luxury to go home or to go where they need to go for care, right? So the bigger discussion is making sure these police departments, making sure they get the proper funding so they know about how to de-escalate when they encounter someone. What are the telltale signs that someone's going through a mental break? Judges having compassion, as Doc said, disproportionate sentencing has always been an issue, not just with absent of mental illness and people in the system, people without mental illness. So, when we start having real granular conversations about 360, what does this solution look like? You know,
Mhm.
it's not a one-pronged approach. This is funding is a big thing, but when you look at other cultures where they have a embracing of retirement culture, where these individuals retire and, you know, contribute their time and their knowledge into these organizations, you know,
Right.
that's another thing. We have an untapped population of retirees who want to offer assistance. So, you know, when as organizations start, you know, maybe reorging to figure out, maybe give a retiree a couple of hours out of the home to come answer a phone at your facility to free up funds to do something else. So I'm just,
Right.
you know, the piece and the education and the right qualified people is one discussion, but there are so many other discussions that are kind of falling off of the table that need to be brought to the forefront. It's not just a quick solution, but the same need we had 10 years ago, the same incidents that Doc was running into when he was working very close in the jail system. These are not new problems. They're still there. There's still no really viable solutions. And we're talking,
Right.
the needle has not moved very much. You have people doing advocate work, you know, Ben Crump and other individuals who are very active in the space. But we need to really start having definitive conversations of, this is the plan and this is how we roll it out, and what does the continuation of this plan look, because it's not just a one step. You know, this is, if a person has a mental illness, this is a lifetime and a commitment of aid and care, and I think
Right.
that's the discussion we're not having.
Absolutely, absolutely. Shout out to Dr. Tiffany Stewart in the building, and yours truly, April. April says that I feel that they need to be treated in the first place before being put in jail, and that would most likely heal a lot of people. So just providing, like as you've mentioned, that those treatments, the resources, and tools for them, you know, as needed. Doc, I would like for you to, and you definitely take a deep dive and provide your perspective and your experience within this book. But share with us, you mentioned some of the awful experiences behind bars where you have those who are suffering from mental illness in a jail with, you know, regular inmates just not being treated. What does that, just give us a scenario of, and pull us into what that looked like for you?
There was footage shot about 15 years ago of the ninth floor where I worked. Jill the Unruly, who unfortunately transitioned on, did the film work through the impetus of Judge Leifman, who's been an advocate for years and bettering the conditions in jail. Anyway, we had an acute unit that was designed for about 15 people, which would house up to 40 people on occasion, more than in Jackson's mental health emergency room. We had two wings, one which held chronically mentally ill individuals who could not be put in what we call a populated cell. And there were about 60 on that wing. And we had a step-down unit with about 30 on that wing. So on the ninth floor alone, which was the most acute floor for mentally ill individuals, we had 100 people that I would have to make rounds on every day. And below the ninth floor, we had the eighth floor, which was a general population floor for individuals who were compliant with their medication. They could walk around in a common cell. They had access to the basketball yard downstairs. There were about 200 of them. And then there were another 100 or so in the general population who were taking psychotropic medications, but could function in general population. So we're talking about 400 to 500 out of 1,700 people in one jail. And mind you, there were 4 or 5 jails at the time who were being prescribed psychotropic medication, meaning they were diagnosed with some type of mental condition, be it very severe or be it less severe. And we had about another 500 people who were being prescribed psychotropic medications and in the 2 other jails. And that were just, they were just men. So you're talking about 1,000 people being prescribed psychotropic medication. We only had 4 psychiatrists at the time, and we had about 8 social workers, and we had about 10 nurses, and that comprised our mental health core staff at what we call a pretrial detention center, the jail right downtown. So the numbers were just, they would blow your mind.
Right.
They would blow your mind. And
Mhm.
and being head of the team, I took personal responsibility in making sure that everybody got the best care they could have under the circumstances.
Right. So, and again, this hits home. You know, this conversation is definitely personal for me. And it, as a family member, you just feel sometimes that it's like a revolving cycle. You know, you're dealing with a family member who has gotten on some type of drug, whether it's Flocka or prescription medication, crack, whatever it is that's circulating in our communities. And then they do something, as you mentioned, you know, some type of crime, they go to jail. You think that they have some type of rehabilitation, which in most cases, because I don't know if you've seen the TikToks and social media now, I mean, that where the inmates are actually recording themselves and they hire than the people on the streets. Like, it seems as though, so there's that piece of it as well, but then they get out and they're back on the street. And so I would like to know, as for family, I'm going to kind of break it down as we come to a close. What can family members do? What can the community do as a whole? What does that look like?
Okay, what families can do is join organizations like NAC and get educated about mental illness, the signs and symptoms, knowing when somebody's not taking their medication, if they start to lose sleep at night, if they not taking their medication every day, notice those type of symptoms. We have medications now which come in injectable form that last a month. The development of newer medication that works is there. It's a matter of getting people access. One of those newer medications, and it is the most important medication to be developed in years, is Suboxone. It's used for the treatment of opiate abuse. I mean, you hear all over the news, fentanyl use is out of hand. It kills people. There's a medication called Suboxone. It's amazing. I have seen a young man who's hooked on opiates that's now about to enter the fire academy. I mean, these stories, the stories of rehabilitation and recovery, this medication is just amazing. But people have to know about it.
Right.
Know it's accessible. They have practitioners have to prescribe in it and believe in it. I was telling one of my friends, one of my good friends who's helping Jasmine, their facilities, there are there are facilities, substance abuse facilities, that will not allow you to take this medication while you're inside. I mean, it's nonsensical. It's nonsensical. These are the purists. These are the.
I think a good point too, and to Doc's point, to piggyback, and this is one of the reasons why my buy-in for this process, right? I think the culture we think we understand because it makes sense to us, right? I send someone, DiDi, you and I would say, hey, if you need help, go get help. We send you to place X, you get the help you need, right? In our mind, we say, okay, you're going to go there. You're going to do the round robin therapy. You're going to talk. You're going to get rehabilitated. You're going to get the meds you need. When Doc and I sat down in this book, I said, what do you mean they don't get the, and again, that was, right. So I can tell you, if it's one thing I hope this audience takes away, and this has absent of whether you're faith driven or not, whatever, whatever. It all boils down to empathy. It boils down to empathy to learn, as Doc said, the education about mental health, mental illness, but also have empathy that, and the commitment as a family member, really view this as an illness and not a choice. And I think, a lot of people are getting on the right mindset of, viewing people as patients and not prisoners. And Doc was going through some of the work with some of his colleagues in the industry who take that stance. But again, reshaping awareness and reshaping the discussions that we need to have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really, it warmed my heart to hear a success story. That there is light at the end of the tunnel. But then I got frustrated again, as you can see in my reaction, when you said that the facilities, won't prescribe it, because it's almost as though they want you to have, not have these resources so that you can maintain in the system. It confuses me.
Treatment, right? So at the end of the day, we need to define what comprehensive treatment looks like, and we need to all have a standard understanding of what that involves. And again, I don't profess to know everything about everything, but Doc has enlightened me on so many things, even working in juvenile corrections as long as I did. I knew one phase of it, but when you hear the other things that you automatically assume because you think it's the right thing to do, or you think it makes sense to you and I, unfortunately, resources, policy, and procedure law doesn't always dictate that outcome. And it's only by awareness, with Doc raising some very poignant facts in this book, like the organizations he talked about, NAMI and others, and organizations like New Horizons and people who are dedicated to the cause. This is just where the conversation originates, and we need to keep it going.
We got to keep the conversation going, because we all know that our people perish for lack of knowledge. And so before you go, Doc, and I'm holding the book up, you guys must get this book, Prescribing Justice, A Doctor's Fight for Truth. You have to get this book. It's available on Amazon. Please, please, please pick it up, read it, understand, and let's continue to have this conversation. Doc, before you go, as I mentioned, we are in a political season. What does this mean in terms of what can we request and ask for in terms of the needs of our community and our culture from our local as well as our national politicians?
We can request better schools. We can request areas where our children can play safely. We can request drug education in our neighborhoods. We can request mobile treatment, offering substance abuse through mobile treatment. We can request adequate funding of mental health. Unfortunately, Florida, we live in Miami. It's an exciting city. People like to come here, but in terms of mental health funding, we're at a level where Alabama and Mississippi is. The state funding mental health is poor. We shouldn't be at a level where states that we think would be more progressive
Right.
than they should be,
Right.
like us.
That's right. That's right. Well, I thank you both so much for joining me tonight. Again, audience, you all have to pick up this book, Prescribing Justice. I have my copy, and my friend wrote me a nice little note to make sure that I stay in the lines as I read. You know, I can track myself because she does know that I need glasses.
You see, I have mine on.
Look at all studious, friend. But thank you so much, Dr. Poitier, for pouring into us and sharing this experience. Of course, Miss Pierce, Deanna Pierce, thank you both for joining us so very much. And we're going to make sure that we pick this up. We're going to put the Amazon link in the comments there, so you guys can be able to get this as well. You'll be able to click on and order your copy. Thank you both so much again for joining us, and we will continue the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Shouts out to Dr. Poitier, and of course, my best friend. I have to say, I am biased. She is my best friend, my girl Deanna, for stopping through and providing us with that information. So very important. But tonight's show is brought to you by the men of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Theta Lambda Lambda Chapter.
Yes, we are Theta Lambda Lambda of the greatest fraternity of Omega Psi Phi Incorporated. Come join us, Thomas T.J. Jefferson Foundation Golf Tournament. Yes, it's going down September 16th, 2024 at Flat Creek Country Club in Peachtree City. For more information, contact Levi Q or Mike Robinson. Big shout out to the baddest chick in the game, DiDi Skky. This is Let's Talk About It podcast.
Shouts out to the bros, Theta Lambda Lambda, and make sure that you check them out there. Foundation tournament. That's going to do it for tonight's show. As I always say, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. So very important, because as you can see, we bring you, we educate you, we engage you, we entertain you. You don't want to miss any of this content. And if by chance you can't watch via video, you can certainly stream it on your favorite streaming platform, because we are right there. We are on Odyssey. We're there on iHeartRadio, Apple Music, wherever you listen, we are there. So don't you go anywhere. Stay connected right here to Let's Talk About It. That's going to do it for tonight's show. I hope that you all enjoyed it. Shouts out to yours truly, April, Davita Johnson in the building, Raphael Morris. We see you, Donna, all of y'all. Thank y'all so much. And I always give the love back to you that you give to me. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful night. Before I go, you know what I say, go for your goals, reach for the stars, because the sky has no limit. We'll see you next time.